And we're back in the studio like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of this Monday afternoon here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Today marks 8 years since the United States release of a film which took not only me, but millions of moviegoers by surprise. Kind of came out of nowhere, had a good pedigree, but not exactly a pedigree for this kind of film. Maybe if it had been a comedy, people would have been like, oh, for sure. But a suspense film, a thriller, a horror movie, and dare I say, a politically charged movie, which, and this is a part that I love because I've done this, going back to New York University. This is one of those movies that is so open in its political and philosophical themes. You can pretty much take it however you want, just as Dirty Harry, depending on how you see that film. Is this a movie about an honest cop getting fucked by the system, or is this a movie about the system itself? Depending on what Dirty Harry, what you think the film is really about, it is either a pretty liberal film or it is a pretty conservative film. But that's the best of cinema, where there are no easy answers. You can say there are, but there really aren't. And when I was watching this movie, I wasn't thinking of any political or philosophical point of view. You don't have to do that. This is just an incredible thriller. The movie I'm talking about, of course, released on this day in 2017, is the brilliant writer-director Jordan Peele's sensational horror thriller, in the immortal words of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Get Out. But the movie Get Out. And one of the things I love about this film, it's hard to explain, but it felt like I was watching something entirely different. Even though, as the film was unspooling, I was counting the different references. I was pointing out to myself how many different classic movies were being represented in this film. And what Jordan Peele did that was so incredible, and Quentin Tarantino to some extent has done this as far as taking stuff he liked from Hawaii Five-0 or the Mission Impossible TV series or the Kung Fu TV series and turning it into cinematic gold. Jordan Peele clearly was a huge fan of some of the best of 60s and 70s thriller, sci-fi, horror cinema. And he kind of took 5 movies, 4 of which I love, but 5 movies, stuck them into a blender, in the immortal words of Richard Genai, the late Richard Genai in Mask, he stuck them into a blender and pressed frappe. The movies that Get Out not so much resembles, but the movies it clearly takes inspiration from. The Stepford Wives, the original Manchurian Candidate, the John Frankenheimer with Frank Sinatra, Lawrence Harvey, and Murder, She Wrote herself, Angela Lansbury, John Schlesinger's Marathon Man, and also John Frankenheimer's Seconds. So you take those movies, I think that's 4 movies, and you take pieces of each, sometimes larger pieces than others. I mean, the movies that I just mentioned, most people have told me, in their opinion, Get Out has the most in common with Stepford Wives. And when I saw it, I saw more Manchurian Candidate and Seconds. But basically, this movie is about a young man of color named Chris, played by a guy whose birthday is today, a really interesting and talented actor, Daniel Kaluuya. And he was in Black Panther, as we know. He was in a movie where I think he played, did he play Fred Hampton? I don't remember the name of the film. But he's been in a number of very distinctive movies and has given distinctive performances. He was in Jordan Peele's Nope, a film I really didn't like. I think it's, I didn't love the movie Us, and I thought the movie Nope was just okay. It was a little bit too weird, I guess, for me. Me of all people, I thought it was too weird. But he plays a young man who has been going out with a young woman. I guess he's supposed to be like grad school age. He's a successful photographer, within normal parameters. His girlfriend's name is Rose, and he's going home to, stop me if you've heard this before, meet the parents. You know, where's Ben Stiller and Bobby D? I don't know. They're not in this movie. And he's going to visit his girlfriend's parents. The parents are played by two interesting actors who really kind of cut their teeth and got their start in a big way in the 1990s. Catherine Keener, a really good actress, and you know how good she is. I usually hate her. Hate. Most movies that she has been in, going back to being John Malkovich and others, she plays unlikable characters. But she plays unlikable, realistic, very human characters. And she plays the mom in this. And another actor I enjoy, Bradley Whitford, who famously was on The West Wing, and in an interesting movie that was not entirely successful from 1993, he plays Michael Keaton's brother in the movie My Life. A very interesting movie written and directed by Bruce Joel Rubin. I don't know if Bruce Joel Rubin directed it, but it's interesting in the sense that Bruce Joel Rubin is the guy who wrote Ghost, Patrick Swayze, ditto, and he also wrote Jacob's Ladder, which, as I've talked about on the channel, is maybe the greatest screenplay ever written in the world of Hollywood. That was a script that bounced around for a decade, and everyone who read it loved it. Everyone who read it said, this would make a great movie, but there's no way to do it. Words to that effect, but they ended up making it, and the film was terrific. But Bradley Whitford is the father, and you have a few laughs even in 2017 watching the movie because they kind of throw a little bit of current politics in the Bradley Whitford character. And this is another one of those things, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, there's a moment where Bradley Whitford, no spoilers, tells us who he voted for in 2008 and who he voted for in 2012. And no matter where you are, it's funny. And I like that. Because I saw that movie with a nice cross-section of people. It was at the Broadway Mall, big crowd. It was the opening weekend. The reviews had just been through the roof. So, okay, let's go see the movie. And when Bradley Whitford's character with a straight face said, yep, and I would do it again, the audience laughed. And I guarantee you, the people who laughed weren't all agreeing, oh, this is a good guy because he voted for this. But no, it worked. Because no matter how you looked at it, you were right or you're wrong. Just like real life. So, the world of the film, the character of Chris is meeting the family. And they seem nice enough. Catherine Keener character, I think that she's a psychiatrist or a psychologist or something like that. I don't remember what Bradley Whitford's character, the father, does, but they're very well off. They are very well off, and dare I say this out loud, they're pretty much what used to be known as limousine liberals, which means I'm going to vote a certain way, but I'm not going to get my hands dirty. Some variation on that is how they're presented in this film. And they are supposed to be figures of fun. We're not supposed to think, if we just are dropped into this movie about 20 minutes in, this doesn't feel like a thriller. It certainly doesn't feel like a political thriller. When we talk about political thrillers, we mean films like The Parallax View, The Manchurian Candidate, hell, even Marathon Man, dealing with Nazis and Jewish Americans, some of whom survived. And what if we see Nazi number one walking around the streets of Manhattan? You know, how many people will it take to beat this guy to death with our bare hands? Anybody want to take a crack here? But usually that's not what is meant by normally political thriller is a film that deals with presidential politics. In the Line of Fire, also with Clint, political thriller, right? Because he plays a Secret Service agent trying to protect the president from a potential assassin. But there are different kinds and there are different levels. And the truth is, this movie just sets itself up to be a conventional mindfuck type movie where there appear to be surrealist elements. Well, there are surrealist elements. And all of these antecedents, these legendary classic movies informing the narrative, but not dominating. And when this movie came to an end, because I'm not giving you any spoilers whatsoever, when this movie came to an end, I all but had a chill. I felt as if I had seen something almost revolutionary. This was the best big studio film that I had probably seen. I couldn't even remember the last one. Certainly the best movie that I saw in theaters, because I don't really go to the movies and hadn't gone a ton since, let's say, the early 2000s. But this was the best movie that I had seen in theaters since, I don't know, at least a decade. So when I talk about the different films and how Get Out echoes them and kind of takes inspiration, The Stepford Wives, for those who don't know, it's a film set in a kind of a town where all of the wives behave as if they are automations, robots, or if you want to do another science fiction classic directed by the guy who did the original Dirty Harry, Don Siegel, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Invasion of the Body Snatchers deals with an alien invasion. Spoiler alert, Get Out does not deal with an alien invasion. There are moments where it starts to feel a little bit like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But Invasion of the Body Snatchers, there are these pod people, or pods, they come to Earth, and they start to take people over. And the people look like their usual selves, but their behavior, their personality is entirely different. Now, in the 50s, this was supposedly a Red Scare movie. You know, that they're against the commies, they're against Joseph McCarthy. And Don Siegel always said, that's just baloney. I wasn't trying to make it. I was making a science fiction film. I think Siegel was full of shit there. He knew exactly what he was doing. But the idea is, that's a science fiction film. That is a thriller. That is a horror film. But it's speaking to current realities. And you could have a movie such as The Stepford Wives, where you seem to be suggesting that, yeah, wives should be seen and not heard. You know, just bake your cookies. Don't get in our way. Let the men talk. And Stepford Wives, there's elements of that in Get Out, but not in the same kind of way. In the way of, I know who this person is. Why are they not reacting to what I'm saying the way that they were a couple of weeks ago? Something's wrong. Something is different. This movie gets into the something is wrong, something is different through the eyes of the character Chris, where he meets somebody, he knows this guy, and the guy is coming across like an entirely different person. You know, almost, is this a twin? This is not the guy that I know. So that's the Stepford Wives angle in this movie. Now, I mentioned the Rock Hudson, I didn't say Rock Hudson, but the movie Seconds was the movie that, to me, this felt the most like. In a movie Seconds, you have a character played by a great old actor who later was on a TV show Wings in the 90s named John Randolph. And in the movie Seconds, he is somebody who is a man of means. He has a lot of money. He's miserable in his life. And he kind of gets his arm twisted into having this radical, experimental, crazy surgery, postmodern. This movie is almost 60 years old, and there are concepts in Seconds that I don't think will ever take place, but in the world of the film are viable. We can, little $6 million man kind of thing, but we can take this guy who is a kind of beaten up 60-year-old man who looks closer to 70. But we can perform these radical surgeries and drugs and treatments, and he's going to come out looking like 35-year-old Rock Hudson. Matinee idol looks, the perfect hair, the great build, everything. And he's still got money, but he's going to have all of his old memories. He's going to have all of his old memories. So in the world of this film, there is the idea of this person is not behaving the way they look. Something is not correct. And in the movie Seconds, because he still has all of his memories, Arthur Hamilton, noted banker who dies in a fire, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, reborn as Rock Hudson's Tony Wilson, something's wrong with this guy. He's off. Well, maybe we need to kind of re-educate him a little bit to put him back into society, or maybe not. Maybe we're just gonna, I won't even say it. Maybe we'll just figure something else out with this guy. Now, the Manchurian Candidate, they did the remake with Denzel about 15 years ago. It's okay. That was not something that should have been fucked with. The original is perfect. It is perfect. You can't do it better. That's the essence of a political thriller. That movie, you have a Korean War veteran played by great British actor Lawrence Harvey, who presumably while he was in Korea, he was taken prisoner, and he wasn't simply in a prisoner camp. He was brainwashed. And they figured out a way to have him basically be a sleeper agent. When he comes back to the United States, a war hero, he seems like he's okay. Nice enough guy, right? Frank Sinatra, old Blue Eyes himself in the movie, was his old war buddy. But Sinatra's kind of remembering some real weird shit that was going on, and he's not quite sure what it was. But the reality is, the Lawrence Harvey character, whenever he is exposed to certain colors, certain cards, whatever it might be, he ceases to be who he is, and he becomes a cold, remorseless, emotionless killer, easily directed by the Angela Lansbury character. Whoever thought that Jessica Fletcher, Murder, She Wrote, decades earlier, would be a terrifying villain in a movie Manchurian Candidate? So, Get Out has elements of that, where these characters, is it a Stepford Wives situation? Is it a brainwashing Manchurian Candidate where pretending this person is being forced to make believe that they're someone who they're not? Is this Invasion of the Body Snatchers? Are we dealing with spacemen here? What the fuck is going on? Now, the other movie that this echoes, it's in a different way, is Marathon Man, which is probably my favorite film overall that I have mentioned out of all of these. And Marathon Man is a film that is now almost 50 years old. And it deals with a young Jewish American whose father was a prestigious and exalted scholar who was accused of being a communist. And his life was destroyed, and he ended up committing suicide. And the main character, Thomas Babington Levy, or Babe, he has devoted his life to trying to prove his father's innocence. Even though his father he wasn't convicted, he didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't a criminal. But there was a time where just using that word was enough to ruin someone's life. You saw what happened in Hollywood. So many people. I want to know how many communists you knew, the whole thing. You had people like Bogart willing to throw their careers away to support their friends. And then you had other people pretty much playing ball and becoming pariahs, such as Elia Kazan, for the rest of their careers. But the Marathon Man connection, it's not as direct as the others that I spoke of. But the sense of paranoia, the feeling that something is going on here that should not be happening. In the world of Marathon Man, you have a kid, the Dustin Hoffman character, he's a graduate student. It's supposed to be kind of a wink at the fact that he played The Graduate, 8 years earlier or whatever it was, 9 years earlier. But everything in his life seems a certain way. He's training. He hopes to compete in the Olympics someday. He's a really good runner. And his brother is very wealthy. He's in the oil business. But then it turns out he's being told, well, your brother was actually not in the oil business. Your brother was like an American James Bond. He was all but our number one assassin. He was our top guy. Oh, and by the way, there might be some Nazis knocking at your door looking to get information from you. The sense of creeping dread and paranoia, which in the world of Marathon Man, we know as the audience, we're a couple of steps ahead of Dustin Hoffman's Thomas Babington Levy. We know that it's not paranoia. This is all happening. You're just going to have to pull up your britches. You're going to have to fucking figure it out. Because there's a bunch of really bad people. They're not just going to ask you questions. They mean to kill you. What are you going to do? You're just a grad student. You're not trained for any of this. How badly do you burn to get vengeance on these fucking Nazis? We'll just have to find out. But this is a mildest of mild spoilers. There is a moment towards the end of Get Out where Daniel Kaluuya's Chris is in a chair. And he is not simply like sitting in a chair like we're at the movies and we're just kind of hanging out. And I remember watching this scene thinking the chair that he was in was it kind of looked comfortable, but he really couldn't move. And I was thinking of, I'm in a chair in theaters and I got my feet up and it was really comfortable at the Broadway Mall and all that. But this scene is framed in such a way, it is very similar to, you could argue, a top 10 most famous scenes in the history of Hollywood cinema from the movie Marathon Man. Where in the case of Marathon Man, I don't really give a shit about spoilers. The film is 50 years old, readily available on streaming. It's on Paramount Plus, and it's been free on Netflix and Prime. It is a top 10 greatest thrillers in the history of Hollywood. But there is a scene in the film where Dustin Hoffman has been captured by the bad guys, including Lord Laurence Olivier as Nazi bad guy number one, Christian Zell. This is not just a random guy who associated with them. He was like high command. And he's a dentist. As fucked up as that is, what do you mean he's a dentist? Yeah, you don't want to know. Watch the movie. But there is a scene in the film where Olivier's Christian Zell is trying to get information from Dustin Hoffman's Thomas Babington Levy. He needs to know, yeah, we can kill the kid, but is there going to be anyone else? If we kill the kid, am I going to be able to go get my diamonds? Or is somebody else going to try to pick me off? Because, yeah, I know how to take care of myself, but I'm just a doddering old man. More or less. Because Olivier it wasn't that he was so old, but he looked older. He wasn't in great health in real life, but it kind of worked for the character because he was somebody who has been living in seclusion for decades. So the framing of the shots in Get Out and the framing of the shots in Marathon Man as Dustin Hoffman he's tortured. He is literally tortured by the Nazi dentist Christian Zell in the movie Marathon Man. And when he doesn't, it's not that he's not giving him any information. He doesn't have any information. He literally knows nothing. He knows as much as we think he knows, which is that his brother came to him. The brother was not able to give him anything. He doesn't know shit. All he knows is there are these people attack me in the park, and maybe they're connected to this, and now what? So in a world of Get Out, the character of Chris is the eyes of the audience, and it's a good way to tell this particular story. We are not ahead of him until maybe 15 minutes left in the movie. We are learning the madness surrounding him. It kind of slowly becomes more and more apparent that this is not just going to be a nice weekend with my potential future in-laws. There is really crazy, sinister bullshit going on. And it's kind of hard to explain. And Jim Carrey was on, I think it was Graham Norton a number of years ago, not long after the release of Get Out. Jim Carrey was on, and he was sharing the stage, and Graham Norton, with Daniel Kaluuya. And he was telling Daniel, you're an incredible actor, man. I can't be the first person. And of course, the audience is cheering. He was basically saying, what you were doing with your eyes in that movie, I've never seen anybody be able to do that before. And Jim said it in a way he was kind of being funny, and you could tell Daniel Kaluuya was a little embarrassed. Maybe he's a fan of Jim Carrey. Maybe he doesn't even like him. But the way that he acts with his eyes and with his body language, it's kind of hard to explain. But he didn't really do it in the movie Nope, but he did it in Black Panther. He has this way of moving around and kind of almost getting underneath another actor and looking up at them with those piercing eyes as if he's gazing into their soul. Now, on a lesser scale, George Clooney did something similar when he was on the TV show ER, and he did it so much that it became a thing that people made fun of, and Steven Soderbergh told him, George, if you could not do that anymore, because now everybody expects it. Clooney did this thing where he would drop his head, and he wouldn't move his head, and he would tilt his eyes up as much as he could without moving his head. It worked the first, 100 times he did it, and then people said, no, do something else. So Clooney started to do something else. And by the time he made the movie Out of Sight with Soderbergh and Jennifer Lopez, Dennis Farina, Ving Rhames, he wasn't doing it anymore. But Daniel Kaluuya in Get Out, he has these moments of incredible concentration and focus. We don't know if this kid is capable of, can he take care of himself? He's outmanned. He's outnumbered. And the title of the movie is kind of telling you, without telling you, this is not going to be a nice, fun weekend. Maybe they'll play a little bingo, a little parcheesi. Hey, the two young kids, they got their own room. They could have sex. This is great. We know that that's not going to be, this movie is not going to be the village of the nice, happy people. This is a dirty, gritty thriller in the vein of Marathon Man, which despite the veneer of Manhattan, and we're meeting a lot of people who have a lot of money, it is a really vile, violent, angry, and nasty movie. And Get Out, despite the appearance of wealth from so many of the different characters, and the fact that the character of Chris apparently is very good at what he does, and the girlfriend is wonderful, and they have beautiful chemistry. Was it Allison Williams, the actress, and Daniel Kaluuya? They looked like a real couple to me. It didn't seem like they were just actors hitting their marks. I bought it, and I really bought the relationship between Bradley Whitford and Catherine Keener. And the irony is, mild spoiler, Catherine Keener's character in this film, she plays this role differently than the kind of heel characters that she played going back to the 90s, including being John Malkovich. And this is the first movie she was in where I really liked her character, even if her character is not really a likable character. But it's the way that she played it, and bought into it. And I bought into the idea of brainwashing and signs and symbols meaning something other than what they normally would, and being able to have somebody fall asleep. If you have hypnotized a person successfully by tapping a coffee mug a certain way, I believe it. It doesn't seem like witchcraft or tomfoolery or BS. Everything in this movie works. And another thing I thought the film did brilliantly, and I understand also Jordan Peele had a couple of different endings in mind, but there is a character in the movie who he keeps throwing out these crazy conspiracy theories. And it's to Jordan Peele's credit. This is something that I guessed. I didn't know that his character was going to be as important as he ended up being, but it's something similar in a similar kind of thriller, although this one was satanic. In a movie, The Devil's Advocate, the Charlize Theron's character, the mother, I don't remember the name of the actress, but she starts off the movie seeming like this wacky figure of fun. This woman, oh, she's just a Bible thumper and she's ridiculous. But the further along you get in the movie Devil's Advocate, the more sense she starts to make. And this film, the character I'm talking about, without giving you the name of the character, he starts off in the early scenes, he's a character of fun. We're not supposed to take him seriously, but the longer the movie goes, the more we realize this is the only guy who knows what the fuck is going on here. And that was something that took me by surprise. And when I realized where it was going, I was like, man, Jordan Peele just fucking crushed this. And the movie, although it had a production budget, so I always try to delineate and give you the information, the production budget was somewhere around $5 million. None of the actors made a ton of money is what that means. The marketing budget was somewhere between 25 and 30. So the film was easy enough to produce, and it has the high gloss of a major Hollywood production. If you had told me the production budget was 30 or 40, I wouldn't have blinked. But it was about 35 million total to produce and to market. The film grossed 255 plus million worldwide, about 160, 170 domestic here in the States, and the rest overseas. But it was the kind of film, because it was scary, it played in the overseas markets. And this is the best reviewed horror thriller. I think that it's higher on Rotten Tomatoes even than Silence of the Lambs. Now, I don't know about the movies I mentioned. I think Manchurian Candidate, the original, might be at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, but this is a great film. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to see it immediately, because the previews looked awesome. And the 97, 98% Rotten Tomato score existed when it first came out. 29 out of every 30 critics were telling you to go see it. Critics get things wrong, but usually on the short side. There'll be a movie, and I've kind of joked about this, a film in the 20s on Rotten Tomatoes, which is actually pretty good, and I think the critics missed the boat. In this case, audiences loved it, critics loved it, and it was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. And I got to be honest with you, I was rooting for it to win Best Picture. It didn't. But Jordan Peele did win for his screenplay. And Jordan Peele, although he didn't direct it or write it, he took part in what he said, and this is him being funny because it wasn't what it was, but the reboot of Candyman, the 1992 original. It was not a reboot. It was supposed to come out in 2020, right around the same time as Tom Cruise's Top Gun Maverick, and then COVID fucked everything up as far as movies that were supposed to come out in that summer that ended up having to be postponed indefinitely, or, as is the case with Tom Hanks' Greyhound, just dropped onto streaming. Okay, sorry, we'll take a tax write-off on this. But the Candyman reboot, which was actually simply a direct sequel to the original, was very good. A really good horror movie, not in the same ballpark as Get Out. Get Out is as good, well, it's certainly a lot better than The Stepford Wives, which I don't think is that great. But it is as good, as exciting, as edge of your seat, as mind-twisting as any of those other thrillers I mentioned, whether Invasion of the Body Snatchers, not the one with Donald Sutherland as much as I like it, but more like the one in the 50s. Seconds, the John Frankenheimer film with Rock Hudson, and especially Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman, which is just extraordinary. And of course, Manchurian Candidate. Get Out takes elements from all of them and does something that feels new and fresh and just incredibly alive, electric, and vibrant. It is a great movie. It's kind of hard to believe that it turns 8 years old today, but the calendar doesn't lie. Released on February 24th, 2017. Happy 8th anniversary to the release of a new classic, Jordan Peele's Get Out, starring Daniel Kaluuya, Allison Williams, Bradley Whitford, and a terrific Catherine Keener. This has been episode 452 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your late Monday afternoon here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then,